glad that you all are here. I'm trusting there's more that are online and watching us on our YouTube. But as far as I'm concerned, there's a crowd, and then the crowd roared, and so here everyone is. So we're glad that you are here, and you're here on purpose, and I'm glad to do it. Before I begin the day's talk, I wanted to share the announcements with you. I am the speaker today, and I'm going to be talking about what I'm calling shades of gratitude. But tonight, we also have a way of expressing ourselves in an activity that is the dance classes that we have on Wednesday nights. Walk in, dance out. There's a flyer out there if you would like more information. You can, if there's something that is not addressed in the flyer, just check with the desk and they can probably answer your question. It is at 6:30 and you get to come in. It is in Richelieu Hall. So then we move forward to Sunday, October the 2nd. Can you believe that we're in October? Sometimes the months just seem to march by in my own mind. October the 2nd is this Sunday, and our speaker, again, is me, Reverend Catherine McKinney. And we are moving into a different area, and a different area of learning than we were in the month of September. And so then we move forward in the week. I think we have on Sunday, the women's group meets the first Sunday of the month, and I think they are going to be meeting. If not, it's the second Monday. And it is move forward to Tuesday. Reverend Kathy organized this book reading group that meets right out there in Richelieu Hall, and they really do have an interesting group. They are on their second book that's called Giving God a Good Time, which is by a Sights of Mind minister whose name is Dr. Pat Campbell. And she is a fun-loving minister, and I think it's appropriate that she's written a book like this. They're enjoying this book very, very much, and they do it and they go slowly, as we often do in book readings. There is no agenda. You don't have to get this much done by the end of the day. You simply just read whatever comes up. And so that's what is happening. And then that is on October the 4th. And so also on October the 4th at 11 o'clock, immediately following that book reading, we have the yoga class in Richelieu Hall. And the woman that has been leading this group is very diligent and is very concerned about everyone's welfare. She leads a very safe yoga class. And she has broached the idea, not on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, but at another time, to do a balance class. This is just a one-time class, and people have already signed up for that class, and you can still sign up for that class because you haven't scheduled a time. Dana is going to do it with Monica Ruth, who by her profession was a physical therapist in practice. So she also has a lot of understanding about the body and how things can be done and keep it safe and all of those different things. Now, I will add that when I talked with Dana yesterday, how she visions the class, she plans to put as many people as are coming. She will put a chair out. This is not for you to necessarily sit in. It's to hold on to for balance, because this is a balance class. And not everyone is at whatever level of awareness that you're willing to do this. And so she's not expecting that. She is going to teach you exercises and do exercises so that you can strengthen the parts of your body that will enable you to catch yourself if you stumble and fall. She feels very strongly about this as a safety measure, and wherever level of fitness you are, you will have no problem in this class. She intends to respect and honor everyone. If you haven't signed up, go ahead and sign up, and as soon as we figure out a time, then that is what we will let you know, and probably we'll give you a call and let you know that way, as well as through announcements. So then we move forward in our week to Wednesday, and we have another book reading on Zoom. I just finished that one online, and it's been in meeting a long time because it started during the pandemic. We too go very slowly and talk about what we do, because getting this far in the class is just not important. And the book we're doing is Learn to Live by Irvin Seal, and he is analyzing from a metaphysical lens the parables of Jesus. And so we're still on the first one. We're not even through with the first one, because we take our time and talk about how it applies to each of us in the book. These book reading classes are really a good way to air out your own ideas and your own responses to things. It's a safe way to be able to do that. And then, of course, next week we have the Wednesday service again. So as we're looking forward, October the 9th is going to be a important Sunday. Not, we used to do breakfast all the time, but this is the first one that we've done since all of the special time has been upon us. And we are going, Dave Slokovich is organizing the breakfast. We're also having new member Sunday in our service. We're accepting people into the membership. And I want it to be an extra special ceremony because we haven't done this in a number of years. And so I want everyone to have that feeling of belonging and being a part of something that is really important. And so I encourage everyone to be here to go to the breakfast, but also just to be here to celebrate. We have a lot of surprises that are happening, and that is a great, great day to begin something new, and that's what we're doing. So I invite you all to make a special mental effort to be here with us on October the 9th as well. Also on October the 16th, because that is another special day, we have not had an annual meeting in this center since 2019, and that's a long time. And so usually we would have an annual meeting about the previous year, the finances, as well as things that were done and accomplished, and so on. And we've missed 2 years doing that. So this meeting is really important. It's important for us to talk about, because this is a time that this center has never been through. Never. And many centers are in the same way. And we want to talk about all of the things that have been mentioned and talk about what we're doing and how we're moving forward. So if you are a member of this center, please plan to do this. And if you're not, consider becoming one on October the 9th. And there are ways that you can do that if that is your desire. And so as we move forward, we remind you that your financial donations to this center are always appreciated, but your presence is also equally appreciated, and your messages to us are appreciated. Everything about those donations, whatever you call them, that come to us is part of what's important to us. And so I thank you for doing that. And so this is the time where I will put down the announcements and consider that the spotlight has shifted, as I often say when I'm doing it for someone else, that I am putting on that speaker hat for today. And so before I go into the opening treatment for today, I found something that I thought was really, really wonderful. And as soon as I saw it, I really wanted to share it. So we are going to have, it's just a 2-minute video, but I want you to enjoy what's going to come up. So take it away.
Hi, this is a little bit of comfort for those that need it.
way above the chimney tops, way above. That's where you'll find me. And so I breathe in with the sounds of the beautiful music, weaving in and out of my consciousness. And I allow the beauty of the music and the ideas that stimulated the song itself to move into my own consciousness as I allow myself to soar, as I allow myself to lift up in consciousness and my thinking and my awareness to a place even higher than I may have imagined I could be. Because there is always a place that I can be safe, that I can be whole, that I can be complete, knowing that I am loved, that I am cared for, and that all is well with my soul. And it's in this place that I cherish, this place where I know that I'm cared for, in this place where I know all is well, that I choose to dwell. And in this place, I can come into my own. I can find that particular part of me that is always there, that is never disturbed, and is always in that perfect place. And I know that as I find that place in the quiet and in the peace, that I can take that feeling and take the knowing and the belief and the faith that comes from that place and take it out into the wider world. Take it out to that place that no matter what goes on in the outer world, I can remember the peace that I find within, and allow that peace, that wholeness, that beauty, and the love to simply express through me whatever is going on in the outer. Because that's what I want to be. I want to be this person that expresses perfectly, that doesn't react, doesn't overreact, but simply is able to respond. Because I know that in my soul, all is well. And it's from that peace and quiet, and from that faith and that foundation, that I am able to lift myself up as the unique expression of God that I am, and be that in this world, and simply be grateful to know that I have the wherewithal, no matter where I am, no matter what is going on, to return to myself, which is always wherever I am. Because God is always wherever I am, my source, the divine, infinite intelligence, right here within me. I'm incredibly grateful to know that this is the truth. That the truth of life is that I am God expressing all the time. And I allow the truth to govern my responses. And then I know that they are perfect every time. And in gratitude for knowing the truth, and for knowing that whatever is going on, I am safe within my soul, I simply agree with this in perfect gratitude and say, and so it is. And so gratitude is what I wanted to talk about today. And I'm not even sure exactly why. It was just something that kept coming to me. And so I do practice gratitude. I do things to practice gratitude. So I was thinking maybe that's what my stimulus was, but I wasn't sure of that. So in order to think about how to and what to talk about, I named it Shades of Gratitude because I was sure that that's exactly how it would turn out to be as I put this in my own consciousness and did some reading. I dug around and found some very interesting things. And so one of the first things I found, surprisingly, was this scientific paper that was put out by UC Berkeley in response to a request from the John Templeton Foundation. They wanted to know what kind of science, what kind of research has gone on out there about gratitude. They weren't asking Berkeley to do the research. They just wanted sort of a survey of everything that had been done. And I'm sure they paid them good money in order to produce that. Well, when I started reading it, I didn't realize that it was actually more like 200 pages. And I'm going to tell you right now that I did not read the whole thing. But the beginning part of it really intrigued my mind. And one of the things they said, okay, if we're going to talk about a topic, we've got to define it. So they defined gratitude. Now, you may define gratitude in something that, I know what it is, even if I can't say what it is, but I know it when I see it kind of thing. Well, that's not good enough for science because if you're going to study something, you have to define something. So they're defining it rather simply as that you're talking about two things. One, you're talking about an outcome or a possible outcome. And two, that the outcome comes from an outside source. So something happens, and it's either from an individual or from a higher power, but it is something, a possible outcome, a positive outcome, and from an outside source. Okay, so we go on from that. So they defined it, and so then they have to say, okay, what kind of experience is this? And then they go into 3 different kinds of things. I'm not going to go through those. The one they all picked that they were going to study was an emotional response. I tend to think of gratitude as an emotional response, and so I stuck with the one they went with. Now, in doing this, they had to say, okay, if it's an emotional response, is this what they call a social construct, meaning have we just learned in society that we're better off if we're grateful for things? Like if somebody does something for me, I say thank you. And if somebody opens the door for me, I'm expecting them to say thank you. Is that what gratitude is? A social thing that we've learned to get along well? Or are we possibly born to be grateful for things? So that was where they started. And that's where it got down into some weeds. But at that point, I remembered I had heard something on NPR just a few days ago, isn't that convenient, that we're talking about animal responses to their environment and things that animals do when they are together. And lots of people study this. I know you've probably seen on nature shows where chimpanzees, when they're in their family, how they groom each other, and they do it in turns, and they even give each other food. They do all kinds of activities that seem to show that they are doing things for others. In other words, you're the outside source, and then the receiver is grateful, and they may do the same for you. And so they went on and studied this, but then as they kept studying and sort of analyzing what they saw, they recognized that sometimes the chimpanzees don't respond accordingly. Let's say I've got a couple of bananas, and instead of eating one and sharing one, I eat them both. Well, the other chimpanzees noticed. They noticed that you were not playing by the rules, so they just turned their back. Now, the offending chimpanzee could get back into the graces, but had to work extra hard. And that happened too. And so they watched this whole interaction. So that sort of argues for that social thing, that they've learned how to get along well by doing things for each other. And in gratitude, I do things for you. So they went through a lot of animal kingdom in this show that I was listening to. But the one that really impressed me was they ended up with, wait for it, guppies. Now, I find it incredibly interesting that there are people in this world that study things as part of their life work that I could never imagine. Guppies. And that is what this man studies. So he knows about guppy behavior. So you can imagine he has big tanks. He doesn't have the ones like you might have had in the first grade classroom. He has these big things. And when they introduce a group of guppies into the tank, the group of guppies perform their own little clan, so to speak. And so within their clan, they do very much like the chimpanzees. They take care of one another. And these are guppies. Now, we're talking about brains like the head of a pin. And so they do this kind of thing, but every now and again, a guppy, essentially, it's like the chimpanzees. He eats 2 bananas instead of sharing it. Well, what the other guppies do is they form their own little group, and they won't let him in. It's the same thing. There's punishment if you don't play by the rules, or you do that. Again, the guppy can get back in, but he has to work extra hard. So I think the scientists, whatever it is that we do, they're beginning to think that we are driven from within to do this in order to be able to live. That our whole society is built on the notion that we're cooperative and help each other, and when we don't, then that's outside the norm. Now, we're not even talking about people at this point. We're just talking about the animal kingdom and how our brains may be wired for this kind of notion of people doing for us and we do for other people. In other words, showing gratitude. So I'm trying to figure, okay, what does all of this mean? Well, I think when we are applying it to human beings, we have to think about what that looks like. Now, social scientists have been saying for a very long time that people who are grateful are generally happier, healthier than people who are not. And they even say, and that's part of the reason, that in community, that people who go to church, who gather for religious groups, are healthier and happier. And so all of that gets mixed into this. So these scientists are wondering, okay, all of these studies that have been done mostly on people who were, the population at large. What about people who have mental issues, health issues? Because would gratitude as a process, as a practice, would that help people who already were in mental distress? So they devised a test. They used college students at a university, 300 of them, who presented themselves to the mental health facility there for social services for counseling. So before giving them any counseling, they divided them into 3 groups. The first group got mental counseling. They all did mental health counseling. They all got the same counseling. But in the first group, for the first 3 weeks of this treatment program, and it was longer, first 3 weeks, the participants were to write 1 letter of gratitude to somebody for each of the 3 weeks. So that's 3 letters over 3 weeks. And so then at 4 weeks, they compared the groups. The second group wrote in their journals, and they wrote about They were encouraged to write about these negative feelings that they're having and to explore and just kind of get it all down on paper. The third group didn't do any writing at all. So at 4 weeks, they start looking at mental health and how you name yourself. Now, when the students came to the center to start with, they had them grade themselves. So they're self-described. And you know, you've done this sometimes, perhaps, even with it, if it's about pain or about anything. The mental health provider will say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you put yourself? And so on the mental health scale, the student evaluated themselves. So at the end of 4 weeks, they had them do that again. Well, they were surprised and, glad to see that those in the letter writing group reported much better mental health than either of the other 2 groups. Even more surprised at the end of 12 weeks, because they only did this for 3 weeks, even more surprised at the end of 12 weeks, the same progress had been made. So they're a little astounded. This is a letter they've written. There's 3 of them, and that's all they've done. So they're very intrigued. So they sort of look into, and these are scientists, so they want to know what's going on that causes this to happen. That's really where they're headed. So they kind of get into the weeds of this and discover that those who wrote the letters, they looked at the words and the way they put them together. Those that the way they analyzed it was now they've already self-reported that they're more mentally healthy. So they're looking at the words. They noted how many positive words they used in their letter. And they noted how many negative words they used and how often they said, we do this. We is a positive way of looking at it. And so the idea then was that it must be the positive words that they were looking at, but then they looked at it deeper and it wasn't the positive words. It was the lesser number of negative words. So they wrote 3 letters. And by the 3rd letter, there were fewer negative words for an overwhelming number of those people who reported being mentally healthy. And so that's what really intrigued the scientists. Because see, at the beginning of this, they're trying to just understand, why are we doing this? And why is it it's maybe innate in us to do this, as we've seen in animal studies, but what good does it do for us? And so they finally decided that when you disassociate yourself with these toxic things, these negative words, that it actually helps you feel better in general without concerning yourself with the positive words. I think that's fascinating. What's even more interesting is when they did follow-ups some time later, and they did some serious follow-ups. They did fMRIs on a certain group of that subset. And so I don't know if you know what that is, but you've got to have things hooked up to you while they look what's happening in your brain when things happen. And they could tell what part of your brains are activated. And they discovered that group of people that had the reduced use of negative words maintained a whole different level of attitudes about themselves and about life that benefited them. So, wow, that's what they're thinking. So it pays then to find ways to be grateful. Now, we all may have just thought that. I know I did. But to understand that we are hardwired in such a way to respond to gratitude, how it actually can change our attitude in general, I buy into only because of my own experience, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought of it, especially with people who self-identified as being anxious or depressed. And that's where the mental health issues were. So what does that say for us individually? Well, I think there are a lot of things that we do. That there are a lot of practices. These are not things that originate, they're not fresh, you've probably heard them. I'm trying to remember, I started doing a gratitude journal a long time ago, and I'm incredibly faithful about it. And I will tell you that every day is not this wonderful day that I am gloriously happy about. But what I do at the end of the day, and I find myself doing it, is even things that may not have turned out well or to my liking or however you want to put it, I find a way to put it in that gratitude journal to be grateful. And I had no idea that there's science behind doing that until I read this a couple of days ago. But that's one of the reasons it works. When I first came to this center, one of the first Thanksgiving Eve services I went to, so we're talking in the late 90s, and it was Dr. Frank doing the service. I'd never been to a Thanksgiving Eve service. How many of you all have been to one of ours, Thanksgiving Eve? I've always thought of it as special, but that's because that very first one was so special for me. I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know anything. I'm just sitting back there in the back. But something happened to me during that service. I cannot tell you anything that was said. I can't tell you what happened. Maybe it was the atmosphere in the room, the music, everything. But I felt different. And I felt gratitude in a way that I hadn't consciously thought about it before. Now, believe me, I have engaged in gratitude activity for a long time, doing things in gratitude for what someone has done, actively doing that. I started when my children were in school. When someone did something like be a Girl Scout leader and have a troop, I did something for them in gratitude because I was so glad my girls could be in Girl Scouts. I wanted them to have camping and all that stuff, and this mama did not want to sleep on a sleeping bag in a tent. I did not, but I wanted my children to have that experience. So I put them in a Girl Scout troop, but it's selfish of me to shove that off, or that's the way I thought of it, on someone else. I needed to show my gratitude, so I was the cookie mom. I was a cookie mom probably a total of about 15 years for different troops in different states. But I did it because I'm grateful for the fact that they had this. It was important to me to do that. I never heard of science of mind, certainly didn't understand any science about gratitude. But move forward to here, I started working with the youth as much as I did and fundraising and teens because I was grateful for that youth program. My children had a science of mind program for children that I never even thought about having. And other Science of Mind, we had been to one other Science of Mind church and they didn't have it, but we did. And I was very grateful. And so that was what I gave in return. So I understand gratitude and being able to do that. But still, sitting in that place, in that service, brought it to a different level. And I think I'm beginning to understand just by reading about it. So I don't know what your practices are. And I'm not offering that much of a prescription today because I think that it's very individual and it needs to come from us. I do think a gratitude journal, whether you keep it every day or you keep it infrequently, is a way to put it down. And I know now from the science that is behind it, there's something about writing it down. Now, the interesting thing about those letters is that they were told, the ones who were to write the letters, that you don't have to send the letter. Just write it down. And it turns out that only like 23% of them actually sent the letter, which was too few a number in order to actually glean anything from it definitively. And so you realize that this is a practice. It's that putting it down and putting into words something that you feel. And what happens is you have to figure that out. Something has to happen in your mind between your own thinking and your own consciousness until you choose the words, whether you type it, whether you write it, however you do it. And see, that process is different for every one of us. So finding things to be grateful for, I know pays benefits. I know that it does. And I am grateful that I know more about it now than I did. And I encourage everyone to engage in some gratitude activity. Do you remember there was a program called Random Acts of Kindness that was put out a number of years ago? And we had bumper stickers. And I didn't have one because I'm not much of a bumper sticker person, but I definitely resonated with the Random Acts of Kindness. And I definitely engaged in some activity. But let me tell you, one Thanksgiving Eve, as it turns out, I was running to Smart and Final just before because I needed something for my Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm standing in line, and when I get up to pay it, I didn't have that many things. The man says, "This man is paying for your stuff." I was blown away. What an amazing thing. And so after I checked out, he turned and looked at him, and the guy said, "No, keep going." So the person behind me also had his stuff paid for. He just decided to celebrate Thanksgiving Eve by buying random people groceries at Smart and Final. And I know that many times, I know people even now who will say, "I was in line at the Starbucks drive-thru and I was about to pay." It says, "No, that's already been paid for." And so those kinds of things don't cost a lot of money. The Smart and Final thing could have been over $100, but the Starbucks thing is an amount of money that many people can afford, and yet who does that? It comes from this generosity of spirit, and maybe it's calculated. I'm just going to do this because I think that I just feel that this is something I need to do. And I know that I've had those feelings before, so I understand that. I definitely have had them. And so by simply basking in that idea and the way it feels, I've also gone through a toll booth line. That's another one. Back when you still had to throw the money into the thing, it said, "Nope, somebody's already paid for that." That's another one that I've had happen. And I just think it's terrific. And so I'm not asking who has actually done that for someone else. And you may think of something different. One of my students in ministerial training was in need of $100. That's what she needed to do. I don't even remember what it was, but it was pertaining to her ministerial work. And she went out to her mailbox one day. She lives in Ventura, and she opened it up, and there was an envelope that had $100 in it. She has no idea where it came from. So what I'm saying is this gratitude piece is wonderful for everyone. I don't think that there is anyone that it wouldn't benefit. And I know that there are people in here who are generous with things and who think about other people. And do you understand? I think part of it has to do with you take yourself out of yourself and you do something for someone else. And I think it's just an absolutely wonderful thing. And I'm grateful to have actually, I don't know why I decided to do this topic, it came to me. And so I learned more about it today. And I do hope that there is something that's filtered in that enlarges your own concept of something that you can use for yourself in a way that enriches you. And there are many ways to be grateful, beyond saying thank you, and beyond opening a door, and beyond picking up stuff when somebody drops it. All of those are wonderful too. But taking that extra step to do something for someone else for seemingly no reason other than that urge within you, it's one of the most glorious things. And so, I invite you to know with me now, I know that this power, this presence that is within me is always creating pathways for me to serve. And I know that whatever comes my way, I want to be open for the opportunity to be generous with myself and to be generous with whatever it is that is needed in the moment. And I want to be aware of it. I want to know that and be able to step up when that's appropriate. I know this for myself, and I know it for everyone. I know that this is a word for good, and I know that it moves forward, knowing that the law is making it happen. I'm grateful, and I say, and so it is. Thank you. So, Ruthie is going to step up with the plate and pass the plate. Maybe not? Okay. No, well, you're going to wait till that. Okay. Divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper all those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is. And isn't that nice? It says it celebrates all those who give as well as those who receive. And that's what we are talking about today. So does anyone have a question that they want to ask? Is there some way that you want to practice or something? Should I get the microphone? Mr. Grant is right ready with the microphone. So go ahead and share that with her.
I listened to Tim Conway Jr. on KFI at night, and he talks about everything, including giving the news that you don't hear. And he talked about the fact that there was a young man who was delivering pizzas. And he, as it turned out, the address he went to was a church. So he knocked, and they invited him in, and they took him up to the front, and they welcomed him, and they said, just set your pizzas here. And they put him in the front row, and they proceeded to talk about the good works he was doing and the job he was doing. And then they took the collection, and in the process, whoever was there in front said, "We are dedicating this collection to you." So they gave him the collection, and he broke up, and he said, this is incredible. He says, "My mother has died," and I don't know, he had a string of things that had happened in his life, but he was overwhelmed by the fact that they had simply honored a working man spontaneously and given him the collection. And being Tim Conway, he finished his broadcast by saying, "Remember, you can still get a hot dog and a drink at Costco for $1.50.
Who is Tim Conway? I don't know who Tim Conway is. He's what? Okay. I think the only Conway I know is the guy who used to be a comedian on the Carol Burnett show, and that's...
His father was on Carol Burnett's show.
Okay, his father was, because that's the one I know. I know nothing else. I don't watch TV, so I have that. Yes, what did you want to say, Dave?
One of the greatest gifts I've ever received to hear was bringing my mother to a Thanksgiving service. And she changed, she shifted after she was at that service into gratitude. She was talking about her parents before and hard times, and she went complete 360, and it was really powerful. I'll never
Yes.
forget that, yeah.
And the thing about my experience is I don't remember what was said. I have no idea. It's been too long. I just remember the feeling. That's what I'm left with. And you have the memory of seeing her change for the better. Very nice. Thank you, Dave.
We actually have a prayer request from an online viewer. Sydney Glass wants us to do a prayer treatment of protection for all the people in Florida who might be in the pathway of the hurricane.
Kiddo. I'm really glad to do that. What's interesting is I have people in Florida. I texted my sister-in-law there yesterday, and my nephew, who's recently moved to that area around Tampa that was originally in the cone. I think it's less so now, but it is, I've lived, you all may remember, I grew up on the Gulf Coast. I mean, hurricanes are part of my life, and I've lived in Florida for 10 years, so it is, I think like of that kind of thing. So, as I breathe in, I know that there is a power that is greater than anything I can imagine. And this power is so immense that it can be fully present right here where I am and right where everyone is on this entire planet, all at the same time and all with the same force and the same energy and the same power. It is beyond something I can truly imagine. I simply accept on faith that the idea that there is an intelligence in this universe that knows all, sees all, and works with all, I know is the power behind the word that I speak for good. And as I unify with that power and feel that oneness, this is what I know. That power that expresses as me, that expresses as everyone on the planet, expresses as nature, responds to this thought. And the idea that all of those individuals that seem to be in the line of destruction by hurricane know wherever they are that they are inspired to do exactly what they need to do to keep themselves safe, that they are cared for, that there is always help, there is always divine, there is always the perfect idea. And I'm knowing that understanding, that power, that presence moves into that experience. Knowing the finest, the highest, and the best is what moves through this experience. All of the wind and all of the water and maybe the lightning and the storm, but all of it is part of the kingdom that God is, and responds to the idea that there is peace, there is harmony within all of the chaos that appears to be. That every person that is involved in anything is doing the highest and best to know and to make sure that everyone is responded to, is safe, and is whole. There is a divine plan in everything. And it unfolds through the activities and actions of all of those who are using the mind of God. And so what I know now is that divine power is acting for the highest and best for everyone concerned, is fully present, and is fully complete in its perfection. I am incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful to know that the power that put the stars in the sky, that brought me in this space right now, is also the power that moves mountains, that moves everything, and is within everything, and hears my word, knowing it is for good, it is only for good, and it's already done in the mind of God. And I simply agree and say, and so it is. And thank you to our online person who asked for that prayer. Does anyone else have a comment, a prayer request? Because they're opening the doors like it's that time. So I really do thank you for being here. And if there's anything you need to know more about anything, then check in with us. Maybe we have all the answers you need. And if we don't, we'll look it up. Thank you.